Okay, let's make a start. Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, in terms of the acoustics, good. Hi, I'm Marco Wan. I teach here at the Faculty of Law, and I'm also the admissions tutor. So on behalf of all of my colleagues, I'd like to welcome all of you onto campus. Welcome to HKU. We've got about an hour and a half together this morning. So what we're going to do is I'm going to, first of all, tell you a little bit about the law faculty. So what we do, its history, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm going to invite some of my colleagues from the admissions committee to come up on stage and tell you a little bit more about some of our programs, some of the programs that we offer in more detail. And then we can open things up to Q&A. So I'm hoping to keep the formal presentations relatively short so that we have more time for interaction. Okay, so that's kind of the flow of my presentation for this morning. So I'm going to start by, again, talking about HKU Law and why we might be a place that you would be interested in coming to. And then we'll talk more about the specific programs. And then I'll say a bit about the specifics of the application process. Okay, so I guess it's customary to begin a talk like this with our international rankings about how well HKU does and the league tables. I don't think that's a very meaningful way of beginning. We do well in the league tables. You know what the rankings are. I know what the rankings are, right? We get them from the same source, probably. And I think important as these league tables are, they don't quite capture what is most important about a university and about tertiary education. So instead, I wanted to start with an anecdote. And this is an anecdote that was used for many years by a former dean of ours that I really like because I think it captures how teaching and learning works in this faculty at HKU. So the anecdote goes something like this. He says, what is it like, right, conventionally being a law student? Right? When you're a law student, you take exams, right? You take exams in contract law, property law, commercial law, whatever it may be. And very often, when you finish the exam, the second you come out of the exam room, you would have forgotten half of the law that you had learned, right, for the exam, half of the law that you crammed for the exam. By the time you graduate, you would have forgotten half of what you had retained, right? So by the time you come out of the exam room, you would be left with kind of half of your knowledge of law. By the time you graduate, you would have forgotten half that you retained. So you're left with a quarter, right? And he says, but by the time you come out into society and start working as a lawyer, you would probably find that the quarter that you retain isn't relevant anymore, right? Because the laws would have changed, right? Law is dynamic, law is constantly evolving, right? New laws get passed, old laws get amended or repealed, right? So what you learned back in year one, right? There is a risk, there's a possibility that that's just not relevant anymore. And I think this anecdote is revealing because it speaks to the fact that what we teach here is not just a set of rules, right? Or a set of documents that's law, although that's part of it. But what we teach here is a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking. Lawyers, especially lawyers in the common law tradition, think in a certain way, right? Lawyers reason in a certain way. And that's what we're trying to impart to our students. It's a very powerful way of thinking. And at the faculty, we also try to kind of probe what is specific about this way of thinking. And we also try to open it up to interdisciplinary perspectives. So we think about common law thinking, legal reasoning in relation to history, in relation to philosophy, in relation to empirical methods, right, data science, as a way of broadening the horizon of our students. Two other things I'd say about teaching here and the programs here at the HKU Law faculty. One is that the programs that we offer are very multicultural, right? So we teach the common law, right? So law as it is understood and practiced within common law jurisdictions like England, Australia, India, South Africa, or Hong Kong is a common law jurisdiction. But the curriculum here also has a strong emphasis on Chinese law, right? So Chinese law is compulsory for our students, and we have quite a lot of expertise in Chinese law, right? Chinese intellectual property law, environmental law. So this is a really unique program. Students come out with a very strong foundation in common law and also a very strong working knowledge of law in the Chinese civil law tradition. It's also a very versatile program. So many of our graduates, of course, go on to become lawyers. But we also see our graduates in many different areas. So journalism, politics, government, business, the arts. Tang Shuwing, who many of you would probably know, is a leading theater director here in Hong Kong. He kind of pioneered physical theater here in Hong Kong. He's a graduate of this faculty. Right, so our programs really train graduates to think and to engage and to lead in many different domains. We're also the law faculty with the longest history here in Hong Kong. And that's significant for a number of reasons, right? So being the oldest isn't necessarily the best thing, I suppose. But being the oldest, having the longest history does mean that we are the most firmly culturally rooted here in Hong Kong amongst all the law faculties, right? You see our graduates pretty much again in every domain in Hong Kong and beyond. And it also means that we have the greatest depth and diversity in the curriculum. So over the years, right, we have developed expertise in pretty much any area of law that you can think of, right? Private law, contracts, torts, public law, right? Constitutional law, human rights, the more kind of theoretical dimensions, legal history, jurisprudence, right? We not only offer courses in those areas, but we have leading scholars in those areas. And that's something that has grown, right, over time. It's a very plural faculty with many, many different scholars adopting many, many different approaches in many, many different areas of law. And that's something we're very proud of. And of course, we have a very distinguished faculty. So in addition to my colleagues based here, just to give you a sense of some of the other international scholars and visitors who have ties with the faculty, Mindy Chen Wishart is a world authority in contract law. She was at Oxford for many years. She was, until recently, Dean of the Oxford Law Faculty. She's an old friend of HKU Law. Lech Galitsky was a judge in the European Court of Human Rights. And he was a visiting professor and he taught a course on European human rights law that was very popular. And of course, Jeffrey Ma needs no introduction, right? A former Chief Justice in the Court of Final Appeal here in Hong Kong. So just a few more features of teaching and learning here at HKU Law and of our programs. Right, so experiential learning is something that we put quite a lot of emphasis on. So experiential learning means encouraging students to take what they learn in the classroom, right, and bring it into a real world setting, right? So we have summer internships and internships during the semester that are very popular. So internships at various law firms, internships at the Department of Justice, et cetera, et cetera. We have a very vibrant clinical legal education program. So as you may know, we have a legal clinic here, and very often people come to us with questions, right? With questions about law, with questions about kind of legal conundrums that they're facing. And my colleagues at the clinic, right, would speak to the people coming and they would select certain cases, and then the students working at the legal clinic would work with these quote unquote clients under the supervision of my colleagues, right? So again, they're taking what they learned in the classroom, right, and bringing it to bear to have on real lives, right? And they have a real impact. We also have a law, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship, or LIGHT lab, which focuses on the kind of technology side of things. Part of the experiential learning that we have here is mooting. Right? So mooting is where students argue a case, right? Argue a case the way lawyers would. In the courtroom, we have a moot court, which I would invite you to visit later after the session. And they would argue in their cases in front of a judge, right? Very often. So again, this is them taking textbook knowledge, right, and converting it into a much more kind of dynamic set of knowledge. Our students do extremely well in the international mooting competitions. I've listed some of them here. And in general, I think if you're someone who is interested in doing law, think about doing mooting, right, in the course of your academic career. It's really very, very rewarding. And it's a lot of fun, right? I see our students having a lot of fun. You see them kind of forming very strong friendship bonds. And it's really great to watch. Exchange is a very important dimension of the curriculum here, right? So what we offer here at HKU is really an international education. And we do encourage our students to go on exchange, right? Many of them do. And they go abroad, usually in their fourth year, either for a year or a semester, right? And they go to a range of countries, right? So of course they go to the common law countries, England, Australia, Canada, but they also go to many countries with a different legal system. So Sweden, Austria, Denmark, Germany, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there is no substitute, right, for immersing yourself in a different cultural environment and also being exposed to a different way of thinking about law. And I think that comparative perspective really kind of sharpens your thinking about your own legal system. So part of the exchange is us sending students away. Another part of it is us welcoming international students on campus. So many of the international exchange agreements are reciprocal. So for every student we send abroad, we receive a student from another institution. Right, so on campus here, we have a very, again, multicultural, international, diverse student body. So sometimes people ask me, oh, I'm thinking about doing law, but I'm not sure whether I should do it in Hong Kong or whether I should go abroad. Right? And one response I give very often is, well, it's not really an either or, right? That you can be based in Hong Kong and also get that international experience. Alumni, right? So I mentioned that we are the law school with the longest history here in Hong Kong. And that means that we have the most extensive, well-developed alumni network. We have alumni, again, not only in law firms and in barristers' chambers, but in government, within academia, in business. And that means that our students get unparalleled mentorship, right? They have access to this wonderful, diverse, dynamic alumni network. So very often we pair students up with mentors. We also invite alumni, distinguished alumni, to come and speak to our students. So just a kind of recent example. So last month, we had a very distinguished alum come in and speak to the first year students for the opening of the academic year. And this is someone who now runs his own firm. And for many years, he was a partner in corporate finance at a leading international law firm in Hong Kong. I think he may have been the first person from Hong Kong to be made partner at this firm. And obviously, corporate finance is a very coveted area today. And during his sharing, he said, when I started my career in the 80s, very few people wanted to do corporate finance, right? And he said his friends thought he was a bit, I mean, not mad, but it was unconventional, to do it. It was, difficult work, grueling hours. There were other areas of law that offered easier money, better hours. Why would anybody want to go into corporate finance? But then, when this area became much more popular, as Hong Kong evolved into an international financial center, right? When all of a sudden everybody needed expertise in this area, he was right there in the center of the action, right? With the experience, with the expertise. And the way I understand the lesson of what he was saying is don't be afraid to be different. So really what he was saying was, don't think in terms of vocation, think in terms of an education, right? Because what is useful changes over time, right? And what you want to learn at university is to think critically, to develop your interests, rather than, again, just focus on the specific set of skills. So there are 3 groups of programs that we offer at the law school. So the first group is our flagship LLB program, right? So if you're thinking about doing law at HKU, this is the flagship law degree. You spend 4 years here and you study law, right? The second group of programs is the 5-year integrated double degree programs, right? So this is done here at HKU. I mean, unless you spend a year away on exchange, but most of the program is done here at HKU. And with the double degree programs, you study law, right? So you do the LLB, and you get a degree in something else, right, from another faculty. And we offer 4 double degrees: the law and arts degree, where you get a law degree and an arts degree in literary studies. We have a new and very popular double degree program in science and law, right? This is where you study law in relation to AI, technology, patents. We have a very popular and also very competitive program in business and law, and also a very popular program in government and law, so law and political administration. And then finally, we have 2 dual degree programs in law. So this is where students spend part of their time at HKU Law and get a law degree from HKU, and part of their time at another institution and also get a law degree from that institution, right? So they spend half of their academic career at HKU and half of their academic career at the partner institution. And the 2 dual degree programs are the HKU UCL double degree program. So you get a law degree from HKU and one from UCL, so 2 common law degrees. And so you have the option of practicing in one or the other jurisdiction. And then the HKU Peking U double degree program. So you get a law degree from HKU and a law degree from Peking U. So you get exposure to 2 different legal systems, right? The common law system here in Hong Kong and also the civil law system in China. It's a very exciting program. Yep. Okay. So just to give you a little bit more detail, so the 4-year LLB, right? So that's where you specialize in the legal field, like I was saying. Excuse me. And if you wanted to, you could minor in another discipline, and lots of our students do. They minor in comparative literature, in music, in history. The law and arts program, this is where students develop their skills in both in legal reasoning, as well as in literary analysis, right? So they develop the skills as lawyers and also as literary critics. And this is a program that prepares students for professions in law, arts and culture, media, but also politics and many other fields. Excuse me. The government and law program, right? So law and politics provides students with knowledge and skills in law, political science, and public administration. And this is a program that prepares students for careers in law, government, and other public institutions like NGOs. Business and law, as the name implies, provides students with knowledge and skills in business and law. And this is especially suited for students who are interested in finance, banking, And then the new law and science program, this is really the first of its kind in Asia. And it equips students with analytical and evaluative skills in both law and science. And it's especially suited for students who are interested in kind of STEM type subjects and law and technology. These are the fees for our programs. And I mean, I'll put the slides up on the HKU Law faculty website if you want to refer back to any of these figures. What I want to point out here is that for the 5-year double degree program, right, because there is an extra year, the final year is self-financed, right? So we don't receive any government subsidies. So that's something to keep in mind if you're interested in the 5-year double degree programs. The dual degree programs, like I was saying, HKU UCL, that enables students to study in 2 of the world's key global financial centers. It's a very competitive program. It's an intake of 10 students every year, 5 from HKU, 5 from UCL. Right? So we each select 5 students. With the HKU Peking U program, again, students develop an understanding of 2 different legal systems, and they spend 2.5 years at each university. And the annual intake is 4 to 8 students from each institution. And these are the fees associated with each program. And with the HKU UCL program, the students begin at UCL, so they spend years 1 and 2 at UCL, and then they come to Hong Kong as a cohort for their final 2 years. The HKU Peking U program is structured differently, and it's 5 years, and students spend 2.5 years at their home institution, and then the last 2.5 years at the host institution. So if you begin here at HKU, you spend 2.5 years at HKU, and then you go to Peking U, and vice versa. And then finally, the application process, right? What are we looking for, and what should you bear in mind? In general, we are looking for, of course, good communication, intellectual and analytical skills. Right? So really, we're looking for students who are intellectually versatile, right? Who are curious about the world, and who, of course, have good English language proficiency. Sometimes people ask me, oh, do I need to have done an internship at a law firm or have some experience with law? Right? The answer is no. Right. So don't feel compelled to talk about an internship that you've done, in the barrister's chambers. I mean, if you want to, if you've done that, great, right? But it's definitely not a requirement. And I think quite realistically, if you are interested in coming here, you need to put us as your first choice, right? When you're selecting programs. In theory, we also consider students who put us as kind of, second or third or fourth choice. But I mean, the competition is such that if you don't put us as first choice, the places will be allocated to people who do. And it's a holistic assessment, and I'm happy to talk more about that if people have questions. It's a holistic assessment, but we look at things like the predicted score report, the personal statement is very important, teacher recommendations, right? It's really a package that we look at. In terms of grades, right, these are the average grades of our students from this past year. So that gives you a sense of what we are looking for. And we're looking for the best 6 subjects, so English plus the best 5. Again, these slides will be put up on the HKU website. If you're a non-JUPAS applicant, right, these are the kind of scores that we are looking at for admissions. So if you're doing GCE levels, we're looking at least 3 A-star. For the IB, this year we've changed the scoring, the measure for admissions, but it's still pretty much comparable to previous years. So for the LLB, 39, BLB, 40 out of 45. Business and law, 41 out of 45, government and law, 40 out of 45, and science and law, 41 out of 45. And then finally, the application process for the dual degrees, right? So the details are on the website. I won't bore you with the details here, but the one thing I would want to point out is that you can only apply through one institution, right? So either you apply through HKU or you apply through the partner institution, depending on the education system you're embedded in. Year after year, we get questions asking, can I apply through both routes? And the answer is a definite no, right? If you do that, you will be disqualified. So please don't do that. We also get questions sometimes asking us, is it easier, right, through one route or another? The answer is we haven't done a scientific study, right, of the competition over in China or in England. But what we can see is that students who come in, they are of broadly comparable standards, and they're all very, very good and very, again, intellectually versatile. So same idea here. The deadline is the 31st of January if you're interested in the dual degree programs. And these are the key dates, right? So JUPAS application deadline, as you probably know, 4th of December. Deadline for the dual degree programs with our partner institutions, 31st of January. And then deadline for non-JUPAS applicants, 31st of July for the other programs. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. And to make up for lost time, we're just going to move to the next portion, which is where I invite my colleagues to come and tell you a little bit more about the double degree programs.
Good morning. So my name is Trevor, and I am the director of the Government Laws program. I understand today there are lots of information to take in and a lot of information to process. And I was one of you many years ago, not many years, some years ago. So I understand that it's very difficult to process a lot. So for me, I'm going to be short. I'm going to make points that I hope you will remember and be able to assess on. So today I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should study the Government Laws double degree program. Again, Government and Laws is one of the double degree programs offered at HKU, which you'll get a degree in LLB and a degree in government, which is basically politics and public administration. And that is a Bachelor of Social Sciences degree. So 2 degrees, one in political science and one in law. The first reason is that you get to enroll in a world-class elite undergraduate program. And that point has been made very clear by my colleague Marco, which I don't have to go into very much details. But the mission of the Government Laws program in particular is to nurture the next generation of principled leaders to advance the public interest and the rule of law. We very much care that our students coming out from this program will know how to think responsibly, constructively, and be able to render good suggestion on how we could bring about the common good. And it is a mindset that we want to nurture over and above the hard knowledge that we will also impart. The second reason is that you will study at the world-leading faculties in law and political science under renowned academics who specialize in a lot of different fields, including the cutting-edge fields such as data science, artificial intelligence, and the intersections with law and governance. Marco has covered the law part, and I'll say a little bit about the political science part. In the Department of Politics and Public Administration, there are lots of experts, world-leading experts, on a lot of very important issues that confront the world nowadays. For example, how artificial intelligence will impact on how governance, the mode of governance will operate, how data science will change the mode of public administration, how do we understand global conflicts, wars, so on and so forth. And we have a lot of people, academics, who specialize in that and who are very ready to tell each and every one of you different perspectives that you might be able to find useful in understanding these issues. The third reason, we provide very robust training in industry knowledge for a wide range of career pathways. And we have, for example, of course, we have lawyers, we have distinguished barristers, judges, and solicitors coming from our program, but we also have a very strong league of alumni in, for example, banking, in the United Nations. I understand that one of my Simui recently got into recently was employed as a United Nations development program in, I think, one of the Southeast Asian countries. I cannot remember exactly which, but we do have a lot of alumni pursuing international law, international organizations career. And of course, we have academics, and we have banking, so on and so forth. And we also have a government and laws annual alumni mentorship program, which alumni of this program will come back, talk to the students, and pair up with the students so they could get tailored career advice. The fourth reason, you get 2 degrees in 5 years. As you know, the default is 4 years, 1 degree. In other words, 1 more year, 1 more degree, very efficient. And you get double access to exchange opportunities, professional and alumni networks, and academic mentorship, because you will also be entitled to the exchange opportunities networks offered by the other side of the program. So you have dual access, essentially. The final reasons, we have a very strong tradition in student-led experiential learning. And that means that the student will help, in collaboration with the program, will provide a lot of intracurricular and extracurricular experiences, which students will see how law and political science operate in real world. And that is facilitated by the flagship student community, which has strong global connections and a supportive peer network. For example, this, as you recognize, this is exactly this room during the COVID days, as you can see from the mask. So this is a forum that we organized by our students on, for example, some of the pressing issues confronting Hong Kong recently. And this is an interview we conduct with Lord Neuberger as the judge. Lord Neuberger is the former president of the United Kingdom Supreme Court, who is also a non-permanent judge, 非常任法官, in our Court of Final Appeal, the 香港終審法院. So he'll come in once in a while to judge case, and we managed to grab him and have the opportunity, very prestigious opportunity, to have our students to directly converse with him. So our students do have these opportunities to see how law operates in real life. And also some of the magazines that we produce, our students led by our students, they also have opportunities to engage in actual writing, publication, so on and so forth. And these are just some of the examples of the product that our students have produced. I guess this will be very important to many aspirants as well. The success rate of, in particular, the JUPAS applicants who place in Band A is 51.6%. And that's basically roughly a half. So this is indeed a very competitive program. We do not admit everybody. We admit only half, around half. And we do look for good candidates who are able to excel in the program. And that is basically the success rate that you see. And basically what I've just said for the last 5 or so minutes, of course, I've said it as a program director. And of course, I have the vested interest to add a little bit of flowery to what I've just said. But over and above, I also said this truthfully as an alumni of this program. I was a graduate of this program. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago. In case you miss it, it's on the first slide of this PowerPoint. But I understand the education afforded by this program, and that's why I do think it offers a very, very good education that I encourage all of you to also think about. And in case you would like to know more the details and all the other mechanics of this program, or if you want to know my age, you are welcome to participate in the next admissions talk we'll be hosting that will be dedicated solely to the government laws program that will be held in around an hour or so at the lower ground floor. This is I think this first or second floor. So just go down directly, you'll see this room, LG18. Yes, you see over there, LG18, which I will, with my colleague from the Department of Politics and Public Administration, will go through some of the more minute details, which I do not want to bother you here. So these are all I want to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Yes, thank you, Trevor. My name is Jackie Yang, and I am the Program Director of the BBA Law Program here at HKU. Now, by attending these admissions talk, I'm sure that you're somehow interested in law, right? But one question in your mind is that perhaps you're thinking whether I should do a single law degree or whether I should do a double degree like BBA law or government and law or arts and law, something like that. Now, may I just borrow what Trevor said just now, in the sense that, well, in terms of the advantages of doing a double degree, perhaps what Trevor mentioned would also be something equally applicable to our BBA law program, say for the context that we may change that from public administration to business. So in this particular mission talk, in this part of the mission talk, I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions, which may be in the mind that when, let's say, when you're considering whether you want to apply for the BBA law program or the LB program, which you may take these factors into account. So after my presentation, during the Q&A session, I may take questions individually, but let's go through these frequently asked questions together. The first one is, well, if I do a double degree, let's say the BBA law and LB program, does it mean that I am going to take less law courses compared to a single law degree program? The answer is no. So I've done some calculation on your behalf and to show you that in terms of the number of law courses to be taken, they will be the same, right? Perhaps the only difference is that, just as what Trevor mentioned, when you do a double degree law program, chances are you have to spend an extra year getting another degree. So the only difference would be in terms of the duration. So for the BBA law and LB program, that would take you 5 years. And then for a single LB program, that would take you 4 years. And I think my colleague Marco had mentioned the issues in terms of the tuition fees. So I'm not going to repeat that because of the time here. Another question is in terms of the business component of that BBA law degree. Now, just because you have enrolled in a double degree program, we still try our best to offer you some sort of autonomy or choices in terms of what you can choose as a major for your business component. So based on the information available as of today, we have 6 different majors available for law students who are doing the BBA law and LB double degree, in the sense that for your business component, you may choose one of these 6 majors here as your major areas of study. But of course, depending on your choice, the number of electives may be a bit different. And this third question will be something to illustrate how the choice of your business component major may affect the courses which you are going to study in terms of the business component. Now, among these business majors, we have one called the professional core in accounting. So the accounting major would be something similar to the law major in the sense that these are what we call the professional programs. And oftentimes for professional programs, the syllabus of the professional program would have to be accredited by the relevant professional body. So in this context, it would be the Hong Kong Institute of CPA, right? So in order to fulfill those professional requirements, as you can see here, if you choose the BBA law program with a major in professional core in accounting, chances are you have to sacrifice the number of free electives in the sense that you're not going to do any free electives. Perhaps at this point, I may explain the terminology a bit further. So of course, at the university, you have to do something called the common core courses as part of your graduation requirement. So that would be something similar or commonly known as the general education courses. So it's not something limited to law. Basically, you can choose among some designated areas which you're interested in, right? So apart from the common core courses, we may have what we call the disciplinary electives, meaning that they are electives offered by the law school, but depending on the interests of the students, we may have different disciplinary electives available, offered to all students, regardless of whether you are from the single degree law program or from the double degree law program, which I'm going to cover that in the fourth question. What about business courses? Now, what about free electives? Free electives essentially mean that you may choose any of the courses offered by the university, so long as you fulfill the entry requirement of that course. So for example, just because you are doing a law major, it doesn't mean that you cannot study an introductory course in chemistry or psychology. So this is what we call a free elective. Basically, you can choose an elective from another faculty. Right. And I know many of the students, perhaps as well as parents, are interested in the exchange opportunities. Again, I think my colleague Marco had already covered that in substantial detail. But if you're interested in knowing more about the exchange opportunities available, you can scan the QR code here, and that would give you some further information offered by HKU. So how would that be different if you are going to be a double degree program law student? In that sense, we may have exchange opportunities offered by both faculties. For example, the Faculty of Business and Economics, as well as the law faculty. And on top of that, we have exchange opportunities offered at the university level. So to put that in another way, you may say that there are 3 different queues for you to apply for exchange, right? And the same is true for other double degree programs. Okay, and then going to the last frequently asked question, it's about the electives. Now, of course, by the time we design the program, you may say that we have a desired objective that we may want to provide disciplinary specific knowledge for a particular program to help nurture students to become a leader within a particular industry or profession. But please don't be bound by your program choice in the sense that just because, for example, at the age of 17, you're interested in business, it doesn't mean that by the age of 20, you can't change your preferences, right? So chances are throughout your education at HKU, you may have your mind change, right? So just because initially you aspire to be a corporate lawyer, it doesn't mean that in time to come, you can't study anything related to human rights, for example. That is why when it comes to the choice of disciplinary electives, meaning electives offered by the law faculty, basically regardless of the programs you are taking, these electives will be offered to all law students. So you're not bound to choose something. Let's say if you're doing the BBA law program, you're not bound to choose programs limited or related to finance or business law, banking law, things like that. And likewise, you can have a look at the QR code here, which would give you a list of our electives available. Okay, lastly, careers. Again, just because you are doing a BBA law program, it doesn't mean that you have to limit your career choice to being a corporate attorney, for example. Now, of course, the majority of our graduates would eventually become legal practitioners, but obviously legal practitioners would not be the only choice. So these are some careers path taken by our former graduates for your reference. Right? So because of the time, I think it's better for me to pass the floor to my colleague. And if you have any further questions, I think we can take the questions individually after the formal presentation here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Ryan Whalen. I'm a member of the Faculty of Law, but I'm here today in my capacity as the director of the dual degree program in law and science, so the LLB and BSc program. Going last means I get to sort of kite off of what everybody else said before me, because administratively, these dual degree programs are all very similar. So the 5 years, the various elective options, the various exchange options, et cetera, et cetera. So to preserve time for Q&A, I will be quite quick in my introduction of the program. I will say that if you want more detail, there's a full 30-minute talk on the BSc LLB program in the Mung Hua building at 2 p.m. today, and I'll be there to talk more about all of the details. So today, right here, I'll just introduce it at a very high level for you. So Marco covered all this in his talk. Oh, I had hidden a bunch of these slides, but I guess they're not hidden anymore. So I'll just, here we go. This is all you really need to know. As Marco said in his talk, the law faculty, the LLB degree, doesn't teach you, the facts of the law. That's not our focus. Our focus is to teach you to think like a lawyer. And what's different about the dual degree program in law and science is that we teach you to think like a lawyer, but we also teach you to think like a scientist. And those are two very different ways of seeing the world and engaging with knowledge. And so if there's a major benefit to arise from the BSc LLB program in particular, is the sheer degree of interdisciplinarity that you tackle. If you do approach or admit to the BSc LLB program, you of course take the core LLB curriculum, but then you take a science major, and you can major in any area offered by the science faculty. So this is a really diverse array of possible degrees. You could major in physics, you could major in chemistry, you could major in what they call decision analytics, which is essentially applied statistics, biology, etc. And what that means is the career outcomes are quite diverse. You could, of course, become a lawyer. That's fine. Many of our graduates will probably do that. I say will probably because, as Marco said earlier, this is a new program. This will be our 4th admission cycle, so 2 more years, and then we'll graduate our first alumni. It's also quite a selective program. We have about 20 spots per year, and we're really looking for applicants who have that interdisciplinary interest, who are interested both in law and in science. And then finally, to close, to save us at least 30 minutes for Q&A before we all go elsewhere, I know many of you are thinking, okay, well, why would I do this? You know, why would I spend 1 extra year to get a science degree along with my LLB or vice versa? And my response to that is that we are living in an increasingly complex society. And as social complexity increases, we need more people who can sort of bridge the gaps between disciplines, right? We need more lawyers who can think like scientists and more scientists who can think like lawyers. And this program, as small as it will be, is going to graduate some of the leading people in Hong Kong who can occupy those interdisciplinary roles. And so they might be lawyers who work in, you know, pharmaceutical firms. They might be patent agents. They might be patent examiners. They might just be scientists who, you know, can actually speak to the lawyers in their firm and understand the legal complexities of the business decisions that their firms engage with. And so all of this increasing complexity is going to create what we hope to be a really diverse set of careers for our graduates. So if you are interested, see me in the Munghua Building T3, 2 p.m. And then I'll also be back here later to give a guest lecture. So I'm going to stop there so we have lots of time for Q&A, okay?
Okay, before we open things up, I'll just say a few words about the Law and Literary Studies program, because I double up in addition to being admissions tutor as the director of the Law and Literary Studies program. So really at the core of the double degree in Law and Literary Studies is the idea that there is a common activity that lawyers and literary critics engage in, right, which is the activity of interpretation. So literary critics interpret poetry, novels, plays, lawyers interpret constitutions, right, statutes, and law schools and literature departments are sites where people think hard about the activity of interpretation. Right, so what does literary criticism mean? What does it mean to be reading a literary text? That's a question that goes back to at least the late 19th century with Matthew Arnold's famous essay, The Function of Criticism at the Present Time. Within law schools, right, we have debates about originalism, about living constitutions. Right? Should we interpret a constitution based on the kind of cultural environment that was there when the constitution was promulgated? Or should we think about the meaning of constitutions as something that evolves, changes over time, right? So at the core of the program is the question of whether there is something that lawyers and literary critics can learn from one another, right? In being in conversation about this activity of interpretation. So at the end of the day, this is a program that trains our students to be sensitive readers, right? Good readers of text, patient readers, nuanced readers of text. Okay, so as my colleagues mentioned, we'll now open things up for Q&A. I think I have colleagues around who would be able to offer you a mic if you would like one. Is that correct? So let's open things up. Are there any questions?
Good morning. I'm Sharon, and thank you for your inspiring sharing. So I am a student in the international A-level curriculum, so I'm going for the non-JUPA stream. I understand that the double degree programs usually only consider candidates who put them as first choice. But if I really, really, really want to study law, can I put one dual degree program as my first choice and two double degrees as my second and third choice? Would the double degree still consider me as a possible candidate? Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, the answer is yes. The answer is yes, but my recommendation is that before you kind of put down your program choices, really do some soul searching. Right? I think, I mean, again, the competition is such that if you don't put it as your first choice, right? I mean, the chances will be lower. So if there is one program that you're particularly interested in, put that as your first choice.
Yes. Okay. I'm HKU Law graduate back in the 1990s, actually. Okay. It's good to see so many people interested in the law degree.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Okay. And my son is applying for university this year. He's also his intention is to study law as well. Okay. One question. So are the graduates of the law degree guaranteed access, guaranteed admission to the PCLL program of HKU?
Yes, so this is a question that we get quite a lot. A couple of responses. So first of all, it's not an official guarantee. It's not an official guarantee that you would get into the PCLL program if you do law here. But I mean, if we look at the data from past years, it's very, very rare for our students not to get into our own PCLL program. Right? So unless something goes very, very wrong, right? I mean, I think the acceptance rate is something like over 95%, right? So it's not an official policy, and I think one thing that's happening is that because our own graduates are so strong, right? They get a place based on their own merit, right? So the answer is no official policy, but I mean, it's rare for them not to get into the PCL here.
Okay, thanks a lot. And my son is actually doing DSC. So I understand that you have interviews for students, right? But he's both interested in the law program, LLB, as well as the law and science interdisciplinary program. So if he just puts one of them in the band A, will there be an interview for both of them, or will the interview be a risk for both programs?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So we're changing our interview policy this year. So in the past, we basically interviewed everybody as a way of, for them to kind of come to campus and meet some of our colleagues. But from this year, we'll be interviewing only students who are kind of at the border, at the margins. So if you're kind of a clear admissions case, we probably won't be interviewing you. But if you're a kind of marginal case, if you miss a point in terms of the minimum score that's required, or if there's something kind of unusual about your profile, right, and we want to kind of know more about you, we will invite you to come in for an interview. But otherwise, the policy is changing this year. I don't know whether Ryan wants to say more.
I'll just add to that the BSc LLB interview system is separate. We had to have a separate track of interviews there. So although we will be we'll interview more people on that side. We're not as we haven't changed the approach like the core LLB program has, but it is theoretically possible, I guess, to answer your question explicitly, to interview for both programs. They don't count towards each other's interview credit, basically, because the BSc LLB admissions are essentially administered by the science faculty as opposed to the law faculty.
Thank you for sharing. In terms of JUPAS admissions, HKU takes a look at DSC candidates' best 6 subjects. And here it says English, Chinese, Math, which are compulsory, and then Citizen and Social Development, elective 1 and 2. However, currently, we only need to reach the attained level to pass citizenship and social developments, which means it won't count as level 5, level 4, level 3. does it mean that HKU will currently take a look at Chinese, English, math, and then the 3 electives? Thank you.
Yeah, so we look at your best 6 subjects, right? What that means is it's your English score and the best 5 subjects, right, that you do. But in addition to that, yes, there are university minimum requirements for Chinese, for instance, or math. So we'll also be looking at that, right, in addition to your best 5 subjects. But the policy is to look at your best 6 subjects, English and your best 5. Yes, that's right. Yes, yes.
Yeah, hello. May I know, I know that there is a sports scholarship schemes in the admission. May I know more details about the scheme and how much weighting or how's the policy that for the different law program would take it?
Yeah.
Yeah, more information or like the number, if possible, to share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't have specific numbers here right now, but again, I think so with the sports scholarship and also with something like the principal nomination scheme, right? That is something that we take into special consideration. And there, again, the policy is the same. It's a holistic assessment. So with the quote unquote normal application process, right? We look at the grades, we look at the teacher's recommendations, we look at the personal statement. It's just that with something like the scheme that you mentioned, right? There is something special about the student that is being brought to our attention, right? So we look at that as well as part of the holistic consideration of the candidate. So there is no kind of specific formula, right? I can't say, oh, we'll give 30% less attention to the grade and, put that 30% towards sports, let's say. But, it's something that we consider holistically. And we take, something like sports achievements into account.
Hi, I wanted to ask, is it possible to take an AI or computer science course as the science major in the Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Laws double degree?
Maybe Ryan.
Oh, hello. It's a great question. Computer science at HKU is offered I think they have their own faculty now or their own department. The science faculty does have ways to get at training in AI. Essentially, there's 2 programs that I think would sort of check that box. There's a program called Decision Analytics, which is essentially kind of applied data science. So it's very math and statistics heavy and also requires some programming. And then there's something called actuarial science, which again is a type of statistics where you're going to have to learn a lot of the math and the programming and engineering underpinnings of AI. But it would not be a bachelor's in computer science, to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. So I actually want to ask because I see the requirement of LLB is around like 34, and the basic requirement of Chinese is level 4. However, if like some of us actually can't reach level 4, but actually the total score actually reaches around like the median, can the law faculty still consider this application?
Yes, so the answer is yes. And again, it goes back to the earlier question about interviews, right? So if you narrowly kind of miss your score for Chinese, right, but you kind of reach the overall score that we're asking for, we'll probably invite you to come in for an interview, right? And kind of find out more about your profile and your interests and your strengths. So I would say don't despair. Right, if you kind of narrowly miss out on Chinese or another subject, the word here, I've used this word several times, is holistic assessment. We're looking at your profile as a whole.
Hello. May I ask, what do you ask us in the interview? And is it mandatory for us all to wear white shirt and black skirt during the interview?
On your second question, is it mandatory to wear black and white? No. No.
What do you ask in the interview? And what is the question?
So with the interviews, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. And I'm sure other people have the same question as well. And I mean, on your point about what to wear, I sometimes wonder, I mean, is there a rumor going around that people have to wear certain things? Because people do come in wearing more or less the same thing. That's something I've observed, and I've never quite understood why. So if there is a rumor out there saying you have to wear black and white, that's a false rumor. Right? In terms of the content of the interview, so what we usually do is we ask the candidates to look at a legal problem. Right? Look at legal problems. So we'll give you, something that's like a page that sets out a specific scenario, right? And we ask you, okay, if you were the judge, right, being asked to adjudicate, how would you do it? Right? How would you do it? Would you find this person guilty, not guilty, liable, not liable, right? And what I would say about the interviews and the way to approach these questions is, very often there's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer, and we're less interested in your conclusion than we are in your thinking process, right? In your reasoning process. And this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about this being a degree that's really, cultivating a certain intellectual versatility, and that's what we're looking for. A kind of corollary piece of advice to that is, don't feel like you have to dig in your heels at an interview if you started off with a certain position, right? There's nothing wrong with changing your mind. So sometimes we see candidates and they sort of say, yes, this person is guilty, or yes, this person is liable. And then kind of in the course of the conversation, you can see them kind of reconsidering, but they feel like if they change their mind, then they've somehow failed, right? That's not how it works. So we're interested in your thinking process, and very often it's the students who, in the interview room, show that they are engaging with the material and the questions that get in, right? So that's what we place a premium on.
Yes, and I just want to add 2 points to that question. First of all, in terms of dress code. Now, of course, we're not going to judge you simply based on your dress code, but I think it's just common sense that don't dress in a very exaggerating way. I mean, in the past, we saw people coming to the interview rooms with cosplay costumes. I mean, this would be something perhaps not that appropriate, but not to say that we'll just reject you right away. Of course, we are going to listen to what you said. I mean, if you bear that sort of quality, you may still be able to score within the interview. But you know what I meant. So just dress in the appropriate dress code. This is the first response. The second response concerning answers to the interview questions. Again, there are no right or wrong answers at all. And I think what matters most is the interaction with your peers, right? Again, in the past, we saw some students coming to the interview citing a lot of cases. So for some reason, he mentioned a lot of case names, right? But within that process, there was no interaction with other peers at all, because simply mentioning the case name does not help. Okay, so you have to take the argument or analyze the argument of your peers and to form your own views, right? So and another way is as a legal practitioner, I have to say, just because you have cited a particular case name, chances are within one single case there may be multiple judgments, so it doesn't help at all. So don't be pretentious, just be yourself. Okay.
Just to add to what Jackie was saying, and in response to your question, so the interview format is a group interview, right? So you come in and you will be in conversation with, let's say, three other candidates, and one thing we look at is kind of your interaction with your peers, and whether you can kind of work together to come up with a response, right, to a legal problem or a legal conundrum.
So thank you for the sharing. So in the interview, are there any specific qualities that you're looking for in applicants? And also, what are the approximate quantities of, for example, DSE stream or IB or A-level applicants that get accepted to this program?
So in terms of specific qualities, it's like I was saying, so there's not kind of one set of criteria in the interview, but I mean, like I was suggesting, you know, and I think I mentioned this in the talk earlier as well, you know, it's communication skills, kind of intellectual ability, intellectual versatility, and the way you interact with other people. So I think ultimately, what we are looking for is a kind of thoughtfulness, If we give you a legal problem, do you think through it? And how do you do it? I think that's what we're looking at and looking for. And in terms of kind of the proportions, JUPAS, non-JUPAS, DSE and other systems, I think there's no kind of set quota, but usually from year to year, it works out to about kind of 70-30 or 60-40. So 70 JUPAS, 30 non-JUPAS, or you know, kind of 60 JUPAS, 40 non-JUPAS, sort of somewhere in that range.
Good morning. I would like to ask a question about the interview and selection process for the interview. So, for example, if my son is so enthusiastic to get into the law faculty, and I understand that for non-JUPAS students, they allowed to fill in 3 choices in the selection form. If he chooses, say, 3 programs in the law faculty, so will it be one interview for all the programs, or different programs will have different interviews?
Yes, Ryan, do you want to?
Hello. It depends on the programs, actually. I believe if the program is administered by the law faculty, that would be a single unitary interview process. And then if the program is administered by the sort of partner faculty, like the Faculty of Science, then there would be a separate interview process. So this varies between the programs, but generally, it could go either way.
Okay, and if he put the BBA law and LLB double program, say, as the first choice, and then the LLB program as the second choice, then if he fail on the first choice program, so if the selection will be go to the LLB program, will be, is it for all the first choice LLB program applicants will be considered first in the selection process?
So again, maybe some of my colleagues want to add to that. So one thing I would say is at the law faculty, there are 2 programs that we administer, right? So based here in Hong Kong. So that is the LLB, the flagship program, and the Law and Literary Studies program that is administered at the law school. The admissions for the other double degree programs are administered from the other faculties in collaboration with us. So what I could say about the admissions programs that admissions for the programs that we administer, the LB and the BALB, the way it works is if you're invited for an interview, you will be interviewed for the LLB, right? And if you have indicated an interest in the BALB, then there will be an additional interview. If we invite you for an interview, an additional interview with a colleague with the school in the Faculty of Arts, right? So to respond to your question more specifically, if you fail in the LLB part of the interview, then essentially you have quote unquote failed for both, right? Because the interview for the BALB is an additional session, right? In addition to the LLB interview. Right. For the other double degree programs, I'll invite my colleagues to respond more directly if they want to.
So for the BBA law program, my understanding is up to last year, they do have interviews available for both non-JUPAS and JUPAS applicant, usually during the summertime. So, but as to the weight to be given to in terms of the interview, in terms of the selection of students, I think on my feet, I cannot give you any concrete figures or in terms of the weighting as to how important that interview is in relation to the BBA law program, because it's something administered by the Faculty of Business and Economics.
And quickly for the government laws program, there will be no interview for JUPAS applicants, but there will be interviews for the non-JUPAS overseas applicants. And the interview will be attended by program directors from both the Department of Politics and Public Administration and the Faculty of Law. That means me, unfortunately. So you have to go through the interview and we'll assess, and the performance at the interview will be important, and we will be looking at that in addition to other scores and supporting documentation as well.
Good morning. Yeah, so my question is there any specific subject of the elective more favorable at more bonus? And I heard some case that if the candidates got the same score in the best six, the one who take the liberal arts will be more considered than the science subject. Is it that kind of situations?
So we don't have any preferences in terms of subjects, and I can say with quite a lot of confidence that students come in from a variety of backgrounds, from the sciences, from the arts, and the social sciences. So no, so there's no preference, and there is certainly no preference for. Well, there's no preference for any specific area, and there's certainly no preference for any specific subjects when it comes to the electives.
Hi, I want to ask what advantages the law student have over LLB student, and I want to know what doesn't matter if I don't study any subjects related to business right now.
Sorry, your question is what advantage would double degree students have?
Yes, over a LLB student.
I wouldn't think about it in terms of advantage per se. I would think about it in terms of orientation, right? So different people have different interests. So some people know that they want to do law, they want to become a lawyer, and they're interested in law, and they want a more focused program. They don't want to quote unquote waste a year when they know that they want a legal career. So that's what they do. Some students are interested in law and something else, and they would like to be exposed to both at university. So they choose a double degree program. So I wouldn't think of it in terms of advantage. I think it really is. I think you should be choosing the program based on your personal circumstances, right? Your personal interests, and also there's a financial dimension as well. Of course, again, the final year is self-funded.
Yes, and just want to add something to Marco's point here, and perhaps in terms of employability, I mean, quantitatively speaking, if you do a double degree program, yes, in terms of math, you have one extra degree, but experience told us that it's not the only consideration which will be taken by employers. So after it's a holistic approach, just as what Marco mentioned. So apart from your academic background, your attitude, your common sense, common knowledge, all these would be something relevant.
So, good morning, and I am a JUPAS applicant. And in Chinese, we say that there is a 校长推荐计划, and I would like to ask if I apply for the double degree, such as the one in law and business or the one in law and science, will there be any conditional offers offered to those in the 校长推荐计划?
Yes, I think so. We make conditional offers under the principal nomination scheme as well. Yes. Yes.
There's a gentleman at the front.
When a student get a recommendation from the principal.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear.
I want to ask what kind of wage we put on the application when a student get recommendation from the school's principal.
So again, there's no kind of specific mathematical formula, right? It's not like, oh, we put 30% more emphasis on the recommendation itself. I think the way to think about these schemes is, again, in terms of the holistic assessment, right? So there is something in the application that's being foregrounded to us, right? Either the sports achievements, or because of something that the principal is telling us that might not be immediately obvious, right, in an applicant's profile. So we look at that. And we we make an assessment based on pretty much the same criteria, right? But with taking this set of special circumstances into account. Is that? So I know that's a little bit vague, but I think it's the best I can kind of do to explain. So we take it very seriously. We take it seriously. So there is something that the principal is telling us, you know, perhaps this candidate has kind of missed out on the score, but this candidate is, you know, very talented in other areas that speaks to their aptitude for doing law, then of course we'll take that into consideration.
Thanks. Okay. A friend of mine's daughter is interested in to apply for law, but he's studying in mainland China, and he's doing Gaokao. She's doing Gaokao this year.
Yeah.
So in your track record, do you accept students who do Gaokao to apply for law, or would you recommend her to do a degree first and then JD?
So yes, we do accept people doing the Gaokao. That's a separate admissions process that's handled by the university rather than the faculty. So there's a kind of centralized administration for dealing with Gaokao students. In terms of whether there is a better route, one or the other, I wouldn't say that there is. I mean, we haven't done a kind of scientific study, right, of whether one route is more advantageous. But yes, the short answer is yes, we do consider Gaokao students.
Thank you.
I think.
Hi, I would like to ask, so I see there's a weighting of 2 on math M1 or M2 for the Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Law double degree. So I would like to ask if, do M1 and M2 students get a priority when they admit for the double degree project? Or do M1 math, M1, M2 and math students, like core math students, get the same degree of attention?
There's no special track for math students. We have math requirements, and if you do plan on taking a math intensive major on the science side, that you'll want to make sure that it's a skill set that you can cope with, because if you take physics, for example, you really do need the math skills to be able to finish that degree's requirements.
Okay.
I think that's our. Well, we can take one more question. I think we need to vacate the premises. I think that's the cue for us to vacate the premises. But I mean, I'll stick around. I think some of my colleagues will be around as well. So please feel free to come up and talk to us and introduce yourself to us and ask us any remaining questions you have. But I think we do need to stop. So we'll take one more question.
So we have to write a personal statement at the end of our application. So what do you expect to have us to write in the personal statement? Like personal introduction, or like stories, or like why major, why school, or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the best way of explaining it is to explain in terms of what not to do, right? So I mentioned earlier on, you know, about kind of some students feeling like they have to talk about an experience at a law firm, or, you know, some kind of law related experience. And, you know, if that's something that you're passionate about, great, right? But very often, we get applications from students, right, who say, I've worked at this amazing law firm, and this is the stuff that I've done. I did X, Y, and Z, and I shadowed this, you know, really big name lawyer. And my heart just sinks, right? Because it's just so obvious that they didn't want to do it from the application. Then they did it because, you know, their family had the connections, or their parents thought it was going to be a good thing. And it shows, right? So again, I'm not saying that, you know, if you did something that's law related that you were passionate about, you shouldn't talk about it. You should, but don't feel like you have an obligation to. And what I would say in terms of what to put in the personal statement is, show us something about what you're passionate about that tells us why you want to do law, and that makes you want to come to HKU, right? And it could be anything. It could be an internship. It could at a law firm. It could be a travel experience. It could be a conversation that you've had with a friend. It could be something that happened in your family, right? Something that you care about that made you want to do law, and that makes you a good fit for us. That's what we're interested in. Okay, so I think we have to stop. Again, we'll be around outside if you have any more questions. So thank you very much for coming today. Thank you very much for listening.